Ethan Cruz had never been inside a place so grand. The Saravian royal palace was like something from a dream or a nightmare, depending on how you saw it. The walls were smooth and shining like glass, glowing with soft blue light. Giant plants hung from the ceilings. Floating orbs moved silently in the air, lighting the hallways. The air smelled like sweet spices and burning wood. Ethan was just a field medic, not a politician. But today, he was part of a human team sent to make peace with the alien Saravians after many years of war. He wasn't supposed to speak. He wasn't even supposed to be here. But a last-minute sickness had taken out the real medical officer. So now, here he was, standing behind the human ambassador, sweating through his uniform. The queen of the Saravians, Thalara, sat on a raised silver throne. Her skin was dark green, with lines of gold running like veins across her arms. Her eyes were large and glowing white. On her lap sat a small bundle, wrapped in silver cloth. That must be her baby, Ethan whispered to himself. The baby looked no older than 1 human year. She had tiny antennae and bright purple eyes. At first, she was quiet, curious. She looked at the humans with wide eyes. The queen began to speak, her voice deep and echoing. "People of Earth," she said, "today we stand not as enemies, but as survivors. Our war is over. Our future depends on peace." Ethan tried to listen. He really did. But then it happened. A loud, shrill cry filled the air. The baby in the queen's arms suddenly screamed. Not a normal cry, this was sharp, painful, like metal scraping inside his head. The humans flinched. Some covered their ears. Even the Saravian guards looked worried. The queen stood quickly, holding her daughter close. "Nira," she said. "Peace, little one." But the baby kept crying. Her skin flickered with blue light. The floating orbs in the room began to shake. Ethan looked around. No one was doing anything. Then the baby was clearly in distress. Then a group of Saravian healers rushed into the room. They moved their glowing hands over the baby. They hummed strange songs. One gave the baby drops of golden liquid. None of it worked. The baby cried louder. Ethan couldn't take it anymore. "Let me try," he said softly. Everyone turned to him. The human ambassador stared in horror. Magnetic Cruz stepped back. Ambassador whispered harshly, but the queen raised her hand. "You wish to soothe the child?" she asked. Ethan gulped. I've worked in human nurseries before. Maybe she just needs a different touch." The queen looked at her daughter. Her face softened. "Fine. If you harm her, you will die." Ethan nodded slowly and walked forward. His boots echoed on the palace floor. He kneeled in front of the queen. "May I?" The queen handed him the baby with careful hands. Nira was hot to the touch. Glowing slightly, her face wet with tears. Ethan took a deep breath. He cradled her like a human child. He rocked her gently side to side. He began to hum a tune his mother once sang to him when he was sick. It was slow and warm to everyone's shock. The baby's crying slowed. Her glowing skin dimmed. Her small hands gripped Ethan's uniform. She sniffled, then yawned. She was asleep. The room was silent. Even the floating orbs stopped moving. Ethan looked up, confused. Did I do something wrong?" Queen Thalara stood, her eyes wide. She's never fallen asleep in anyone's arms but mine. Not even the royal healers could calm her. "But you human." She stepped down from the throne and looked Ethan in the eyes. "If you can do this again," she said seriously, "if you can truly bond with my daughter, I will make you my mate." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Wait? What?" he said. The queen looked calm. "Our children choose their protectors through instinct. Nira chose you. If you prove yourself, you will become the child's guardian and my husband." The entire room gasped. The human ambassador dropped his datapad. Ethan blinked. I just rocked her. Not this wasn't. But the queen raised her hand. "You may leave now. My guards will contact you tomorrow." 2 guards came forward. Ethan gently passed the baby back to the queen. The child whimpered but did not cry. As he walked out of the hall, he heard whispers behind him. A human. As the royal consort. He must be using mind tricks. But Ethan had no answers. He left the palace that day not as a medic, but as someone chosen by an alien baby. Later, back at the human quarters, Ethan sat on his bunk, still shaking. "What just happened?" he muttered. One of the human guards chuckled. "I think you just got engaged to an alien queen, buddy." Ethan groaned and put a pillow over his face. Outside, in the quiet city of glass, the royal baby slept peacefully for the first time in her short life. Ethan Cruz sat in the back of a sleek Saravian transport shuttle, nervous and unsure. The seats were shaped like smooth shells, glowing with soft green light. A soft humming sound filled the air as the shuttle flew above the shining alien city. Outside the curved windows, towers of crystal stretched to the sky. Glowing birds flew in slow patterns. He wasn't going to the palace as a guest this time. He was going as a test subject. Yesterday, Queen Thalara had made a promise. If he could calm her daughter again, he would become her mate.
Now, husband.
Ethan had laughed at first, thinking it was some alien joke. But now, he was being taken back to the palace under royal orders. Guards had knocked on his door early in the morning and simply said, "The Queen awaits." No one explained anything. He rubbed his face with his hands and whispered, "What did I get myself into?" At the palace gates, a tall guard with bright red skin led Ethan down a long hallway. Strange paintings covered the walls, images of Saravian queens from hundreds of years ago, each standing proudly with a glowing child in her arms. The last painting showed Queen Thalara herself, but the baby's face was still unfinished. The baby must choose her protector before they complete the painting, the guard said suddenly. Ethan turned in surprise. "Sorry, I didn't mean to stare." "It's tradition," the guard said, voice flat and dangerous. "If the child bonds with someone unworthy, chaos follows." Ethan gulped. "No pressure, huh?" The guard didn't smile. They arrived at a tall door, which opened with a soft hiss. Inside was a round room covered in soft rugs, floating toys, and strange alien lights. It was the nursery. Queen Thalara stood near a floating cradle, rocking it gently. She wore a long robe made of silver threads, and her dark green skin glowed in the warm light. She looked powerful and tired. When she saw Ethan, she gave a small nod. "You came," she said simply. "I didn't really have a choice," Ethan replied with a nervous smile. The queen tilted her head. "You always have a choice, human, but you accepted the challenge." Ethan looked around the nursery. "So, I just do what I did before?" Thalara said. "But this time, you must stay here for 3 full days. I want to see if your effect on my daughter is real. Or luck." Ethan blinked. 3 days. You will eat here, sleep here, live here. If Nira continues to trust you, I will honor my word." Ethan scratched his head. "And if she doesn't?" "Will be returned to your people, and the offer will end." Ethan took a deep breath. "All right, let's do it." The first few hours went smoothly. Princess Nira was a bit shy at first, hiding her face in her mother's arms. But when Ethan sat beside her and sang the same lullaby, she slowly turned to him. He didn't use any fancy tools, just his voice, his hands, his heart. By midday, the baby was sitting on his lap, giggling as he made funny faces. The queen watched quietly from across the room, her arms crossed, her eyes thoughtful. "You are very calm," she said suddenly. Ethan shrugged. "I worked with a lot of sick kids back on Earth. Lost some too. This feels familiar." The queen sat beside him. "You've seen loss?" Ethan nodded. "My little sister. She was sick when I was young. I used to sing to her like this. Made her feel safe."
Ow.
There was silence for a moment. Then the queen said, "I lost my bondmate during the last battle. Nira never met her father." Ethan looked at her. "I'm sorry." Thalara looked down at her daughter. She has never laughed like that before. By the evening, things changed. A group of Saravian nobles entered the nursery, their long robes dragging on the floor. They looked at Ethan like he was a disease. "This human has no blood, right?" One hissed. "Why does he hold the child?" Another added, "Perhaps the queen is being manipulated. There are drugs. Mind tricks, human machines." Queen Thalara raised her hand. Enough. But General Vorsk, the queen's war advisor, stepped forward. He was tall, scarred, with glowing red eyes. "I respect your wisdom, my queen," he said coldly. "But this experiment is dangerous. If the child bonds too deeply and he leaves, what then? What if he uses her against us?" Stood up, still holding Nira. "I'm not trying to control anyone. She just trusts me, that's all." The general stepped closer, his eyes full of anger. "You are not one of us." Queen Thalara spoke firmly, "And yet, my daughter chose him." The nobles grumbled but left the room. Ethan sat down again, heart racing. "Do you always deal with that much pressure?" he asked. The queen gave a small smile. "Every day." That night, Ethan was given a sleeping pod in the corner of the nursery. It was soft and warm, like being inside a cocoon. Strange alien music played in the background, designed to help Saravian babies sleep. But Ethan couldn't sleep. His mind was racing. What if I fail? What if Nira wakes up and cries and I can't calm her? But then, a soft sound, a whimper. Ethan sat up. The baby was stirring, glowing softly. Breathing fast, Ethan got up and picked her up gently. "It's okay, little star," he whispered. "I'm here," he sang again, softly, slowly, and once more. She smiled and drifted back to sleep. By the second day, the queen spent more time inside the nursery. She asked Ethan questions about Earth, about childhood, about human emotions. "Why? Do humans sing to children?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "Because words alone aren't enough. Music touches the heart." The queen nodded slowly. "Our healers use vibration songs, but they never worked on Nira." "She doesn't need magic," Ethan said. "She needs comfort." Queen Thalara looked thoughtful. She tried holding Nira the way Ethan did. She tried singing, even though the words felt strange in her mouth. It worked slowly. "You're doing great," Ethan encouraged. "You are teaching me," she said in surprise. "You're a great mom," he said. The queen looked at him, truly looked, and something passed between them, something new. But on the third day, disaster struck. Ethan woke. 2 alarms in the nursery, the floating lights were red. Nira was crying again, louder than ever before. Her glow was wild. She was shaking. Queen Thalara rushed in. "What happened?" Ethan checked the baby's cradle. Someone had sabotaged the sensory dampeners. The devices that kept the baby's senses calm had been fried. "She's in sensory overload," Ethan said, heart pounding. He tried singing. It didn't work. The guards burst in. General Vorsk followed. "Arrest the human," he shouted. "He sabotaged the room." "No," Ethan said. "I didn't. I swear." Nira cried harder. Her skin burned hot. But the guards grabbed Ethan, pulling him away from the baby. "Please," Ethan begged. "Let me help her." But they dragged him from the room. Behind him, he heard the screams of the baby, in the quiet voice of the queen, in a cold cell deep below the palace. Ethan sat in silence. He didn't care about the pain. He didn't care about the insult. He cared about the sound still echoing in his ears, as the baby's cries for him. He knew one thing now. This wasn't just a test. Someone wanted him gone. Then sat on the cold floor of his prison cell, staring at the wall. It was made of smooth blue stone, glowing faintly. There were no windows, no clocks. Time moved slowly. He didn't know if it had been hours or days, but one thing never changed. He could still hear her, Nira's cries. Even deep underground, the sound echoed through the palace. It wasn't just crying anymore. It was pain, fear, screaming for someone she trusted, screaming for him. Ethan closed his eyes. "She's just a baby," he whispered. "Why are they punishing her for my mistake?" The door of the cell opened with a soft hiss. A Saravian servant entered quietly, She was young, with pale green skin and soft blue eyes. She carried a small tray of food-glowing fruits, warm broth, and a round bread that smelled like cinnamon. "You should eat," she said gently. "I'm not hungry." Ethan replied. The servant hesitated, then knelt beside him. "You calmed her. You brought peace to the nursery." "Why would you hurt her now?" "I wouldn't," Ethan said, voice tired. "Someone set me up. I would never hurt Nira. I care about her." The servant looked into his eyes for a moment. Then she reached into her robe and pulled out a tiny silver device. "This is a recording crystal," she whispered. "It captured the sabotage." Ethan's eyes widened. "You have proof?" She nodded. "I work in the nursery. I saw General Vorsk enter late at night. He burned the sensory dampeners. Then he left through the back corridor." Ethan stood up, hope rising in his chest. "Why are you helping me?" The servant smiled sadly. "Because I heard her laugh when she was with you, for the first time. You're not like the others." Ethan grabbed her hand. "Can you take me to her?" She nodded quickly. "Follow me." They moved through dark halls beneath the palace, hidden from the guards. The servant knew every shortcut, every secret door. They finally reached a staircase that led to the upper levels. When they reached the nursery doors, Ethan could already hear the chaos inside. Nira was crying louder than ever. The royal healers surrounded her. Queen Thalara stood near her daughter, looking desperate. Her usually calm face was full of worry and fear. "She hasn't eaten," one healer said. "Mind is overstimulated. If this continues, she might collapse." Thalara's hands shook. "She needs him. She only stops crying when he's near." "But he's a traitor," said another healer. Then the door burst open. Ethan stepped in. Every head turned toward him. "Let me help her," he said. Two guards rushed forward, but Queen Thalara raised her hand. "Wait," she said softly. Ethan walked to the cradle. Nira's eyes were glowing, her small body shaking. He bent down and picked her up gently. "Hey, little star," he whispered. "I'm here." He began to hum the same lullaby. Slowly, softly, Nira's glow dimmed. Her shaking stopped. Her cries turned into quiet hiccups. And then she rested her head on Ethan's chest and fell asleep. The room was silent. Queen Thalara stepped forward. "You escaped your cell?" "I didn't escape," Ethan said. "I was released. By someone who believes in the truth." He pulled out the recording crystal and handed it to her. "Watch this." The queen touched the crystal. Small light appeared, showing a clear image of General Vorsk in the nursery. The crystal showed him disabling the machines, sabotaging the cradle. Gasps filled the room. Queen Thalara's eyes burned with anger. "He tried to harm my child. To ruin your bond?" She turned to her guards. "Find General Vorsk now." The guards bowed and ran out. Ethan looked at the Queen. "You trusted me. I didn't want to break that." Queen nodded.
"You didn't."
"And you have done more than any Saravian has done for my daughter." She looked down at Nira, sleeping peacefully in his arms. "She has chosen you again." Later that day, Queen Thalara called a private meeting in the royal chamber. Only Ethan and a few trusted advisors were present. Nira slept peacefully in a floating cradle nearby. "We have a problem," the queen said. "The nobles are growing restless. They do not accept a human consort. Even after today, they call it luck or trickery." Ethan sat quietly. "I don't care about power or titles. I just want Nira to be safe." The queen turned to him. "Then you must stay, not just as her guardian, but as part of the royal family." Ethan was silent for a moment. Do you want that?" Thalara looked at him for a long time. "You bring her peace.
You've
Taught me things I never learned from my own people." "I see your heart. Yes, I want that." Ethan gave a slow nod. "And I'll stay." Over the next few days, Ethan worked closely with Thalara and her healers. He helped build new calming devices for near machines based on human lullabies and soft touch. It combined human and Saravian technology. It worked wonders. Nira started smiling more, laughing, reaching for Ethan whenever he entered the room. Queen began joining Ethan in his routines, bathing the child, playing games, even singing along in broken earth songs. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. They were becoming something more than a team. They were becoming a family. But the peace did not last long. Late one night, an explosion shook the outer palace walls. Alarms screamed through the halls. Ethan grabbed Nira and shielded her as guards rushed in. Queen Thalara appeared in full battle armor. Eyes glowing. "It's a coup," she said. "General Vorsk escaped arrest. He has gathered rebel forces. They're attacking the palace." Ethan's heart pounded. "What do we do? You stay here? Keep Nira safe," she ordered. "No," Ethan said. "I'm going with you. We protect her together." Thalara looked at him. "You are not a soldier." "I'm her father," Ethan replied. The queen gave a rare, warm smile. "Then let's defend our daughter." As the battle raged outside the palace walls, Queen Thalara led her guards into combat, using her telepathic powers to crush the enemy's weapons. Ethan stayed by her side, helping wounded soldiers and guiding civilians to safety. Even in chaos, he sang softly to Nira, calming her. She didn't cry once, and the Saravian people saw it all, a human standing beside their queen, fighting for their child, healing their wounded. The people began to whisper, maybe he was worthy. Maybe he was one of them. The palace shook again. This time, the sound of laser fire echoed down the crystal halls. Red lights flashed, and guards shouted orders as they ran to defend the royal chambers. Ethan held Princess Nira tightly in his arms. The baby wasn't crying, even as the world around them shook. She pressed her face into his chest, trusting him completely. "I won't let anything happen to you," he whispered. Queen Thalara, in her armor, stood tall beside him. Her golden battle helmet reflected the fire outside. She looked like a warrior. "Goddess, Vorski's rebels are inside the outer walls," she said. "They want to take the throne and kill anyone loyal to peace." Ethan frowned. "Because of me?" "Not only you," she answered. "But you are the spark they fear. What you represent." Ethan looked down at the baby, then at the queen. "We can't let them win." Thalara turned to her guards. "Seal the nursery. No one enters unless I command it." The guards saluted. Ethan handed Nira to a trusted nurse and said, "Take her somewhere safe." Thalara raised an eyebrow. "You should stay here." Ethan shook his head. He said, "I was part of this family. Let me fight for it." She stared at him for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "Then stay close to me." The palace halls were full of smoke and confusion. Rebel Saravians in red armor fought the royal guards. Ethan saw flashes of plasma fire, sparks flying and walls cracking from energy blasts. Thalara moved like lightning. Her hands glowed as she used her telepathic powers to disarm attackers. Ethan stayed low, helping fallen soldiers and pulling wounded to safety. Wasn't a fighter, but he knew how to save lives. At one point, a rebel aimed a blaster at Thalara's back. "Look out," Ethan shouted and tackled her to the side. The blast missed by inches. Thalara rolled and threw a pulse wave that knocked the attacker across the hall. She looked at Ethan, breathless. "You could have died." He smiled. "So could you?" Their eyes met in the chaos. Something deeper passed between them. Respect. Care. Connection. They finally reached the royal plaza, where the rebels had taken control. General Vorsk stood on a platform, speaking to his followers. "This queen is no longer Saravian," he shouted. "She bows to a human. She lets him near. Her child. Our bloodline is in danger." The rebels cheered. Thalara stepped forward, armor glowing. "You speak of danger, Vorsk, but it is you who brought war back to my people." Vorsk sneered. "You betrayed tradition." "I chose peace," she said calmly. "And my daughter chose a protector, one stronger than you will ever be." The crowd went silent as Ethan stepped beside her. Vorsk laughed cruelly. "This is your great hero? A soft, small human? Let us see how he survives a real battle." He raised a blaster and fired. Ethan didn't move fast enough, but Thalara jumped in front of him, using her energy shield to block the shot. Sparks exploded. "You will not touch him," she growled. Then she raised her hand and sent a shockwave through the platform. Rebels were thrown to the ground. Borsky stumbled, shocked by her power. But he wasn't done. He pulled a hidden knife and ran toward her. Ethan saw it coming. Without thinking, he grabbed a fallen guard's stun staff and rushed forward. The weapon felt heavy, unfamiliar, but he held it tight, just as Vorsk reached the queen. Ethan struck. The staff hit Vorsk across the chest with a flash of light. He screamed and fell unconscious. Silence fell again. All eyes turned to Ethan, still, standing, breathless, holding the weapon. A human had defeated the queen's greatest enemy with courage, not power. Later, in the grand throne room, the wounded were treated. The rebels were arrested. The fires were put out. Queen Thalara sat beside Ethan on the steps of the throne. Her armor was scratched, and her hair was messy, but her smile was soft. "You saved me," she said. Ethan looked tired. "You saved me first." She touched his hand gently. "Our people saw what you did. They saw who you really are." Ethan looked unsure. "And what's that?" She looked at him deeply. "Not just a guardian, not just a medic, but a leader, a father, and mate." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "You still want that, even after all this?" She smiled. "More than ever." The next day, the queen called for a public gathering in the crystal courtyard. Thousands of Saravians filled the glowing steps. The sky was clear. Sunlight passed through the glass towers like a rainbow. Queen Thalara stood at the center with baby Nira in her arms. Ethan stood beside her, dressed in a long robe given to him by the royal tailors. He felt strange in it, but proud. Thalara raised her voice so all could hear. "Our past was full of war. Our people suffered. But from that pain, something new was born." She looked at Ethan. This human came not with weapons, but with kindness. Not with power, but with care. "My daughter chose him. And now so do I." Gasps and whispers filled the crowd. She turned to the royal artist. "Finish the painting."
Ah!
A large canvas stood beside them, the one Ethan had seen before in the hallway. The painter dipped a glowing brush and added the final stroke. Ethan's face, standing beside the queen. Holding the child, cheers erupted. Nira laughed and clapped her tiny hands. The people had accepted him. That night, a small private ceremony was held under the moonlight. Only close friends and loyal nobles attended. Queen Thalara wore a white robe made of starlight threads. Ethan wore a dark blue one that matched the night sky. They stood under the twin moons and placed their hands. Together. "I don't know what kind of husband I'll be," Ethan said, "but I promise to protect both of you forever." Dada smiled, "And I promise to stand by your side, in peace and in battle." Nira was placed between them, her tiny hands touching both of theirs. A bright light glowed from the baby's forehead, a sign of bond, approval in Saravian culture. It was complete. A new family had been born. After the ceremony, Ethan stood with Thalara on the palace balcony, looking over the sleeping city. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked softly. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but this feels like home now." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Good, because our journey is just beginning." Ethan looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth still existed. But here on this alien world, he had found something even more rare. A purpose, a family, a love born not from power, but from a simple lullaby.